to people who are non-Muslims and who have accepted Islam, we hear extraordinary stories of how their journey from a position of non-Islam and how they arrived to Islam. Some of the path that they took are really incredible. And a lot of it confirms that truly guidance is from Allah. For those of us who grew up in Muslim homes and always knew ourselves as Muslims, we also went through a path where we are guided. It may have been a moment in your life when something happened. Grandpa died, and you decided in your heart, you know, it's time for me to make a change. And then you begin to pray your salah. Or it may be a moment when you know, some people, when you get married, in our culture they say, I gotta stop living this wild life now. I got married. I need to settle down. I need to get more religious. There are moments in our life, each of our lives, when we made that decision to either pray, or we made that decision to fast in Ramadan, or we made that decision to become a little more conscious and practicing of our faith than we were before. All of us go through that constantly. And sometimes calamities fuels it. Sometimes we sit down and we feel we're getting older, that we need to become more religious. But it's important to understand it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who does this. I want to just mention, for example, a few people who came into Islam. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was a young man who grew up in Isfahan, Iran. His name was Salman al-Farsi. And he grew up in a place so far away from guidance. The Prophet ﷺ is in Mecca, Medina, and he is in Iran. And his journey to Islam was so amazing that he and his father was in charge of the fire worshipping religion. They had this fire, that perpetual fire that they kept going. And growing up as a kid, his job was to keep this fire burning all the time. His father didn't allow him to go outside. He was not exposed to any of the society. He was not allowed to go to the city. He literally lived as a prisoner all day long, just keeping this fire so that people could worship him. And then one day his father needed him to go to the city because he was too busy. And when he went, he heard some Christians singing in the church. And he went and he listened. And he said, this is better than what we have. So he went and he became a Christian. When he went back to his father says, no, it's not better. Tied him up and locked him up in the house. But he was able to get away with a Christian group moving to Syria. And he traveled with them. He stayed with several priests and bishops who turned out to be crooks. Salman al-Farsi's journey literally took almost 30 plus years before he finally found Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and accepted Islam. Allah's guidance comes in amazing ways. There is a person right now, and I've talked about this story before. This is a young man. He sits right now in a town called Churchtown, USA, in Texas. His journey to Islam is even more remarkable. He got into the hospital. He was paralyzed from his neck down. From his neck down, practicing Christian. And was in the hospital. Literally his whole life was basically over. They got him a voice-operated computer that he would talk to and go on the internet, but basically from the neck down, he was only about 30-something years of age. Some rare sickness. He dreamed of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His friend next to his bed had left him one of these cross, the cross with a chain. And he dreamt a man calling himself Muhammad, telling him that that cross, you should not worship the person who died on that cross, that was just a man, and that God is bigger than God, is not a man, and so on. And he, next day, went on the internet and began to look for this name, Muhammad. Suffice to say, he ended up accepting Islam. Found Islam on the internet. Began to look to see someone who can teach him to recite the Quran. Found an Egyptian brother in Egypt who could teach him online. Started to memorize surahs of the Quran, sitting in his hospital. Being a Muslim who never met another Muslim in his whole life. Just practice it. Just accept it. Just memorize the surahs in this book. And then he discovered Nu'man Ali Khan's videos. He began to watch all of them. And the amazing thing was, one day he was reciting Surah Al-Asr in the ward, and an Arab brother from Egypt was doing some repairs in the hospital. And the Arab brother heard this sound of Surah Al-Asr being recited. He said, who is this? Where is this coming from? And when he went, he asked, where did that sound? He said, I recited it. He said, you're a Muslim? He said, yes, I'm Muslim. The Arab brother was not practicing Islam at that time. He had basically given up his own religion. He was a non-practicing Muslim. And he said, wow. And he ended up helping that brother to go to his first Jumu'ah. They had to put him in a specially outfitted vehicle. And he went to Jumu'ah to meet Nu'man Ali Khan. And after that Jumu'ah, Robert the Valiant injured himself because of the ride that he had to go through. And he was laid up for the next 6 months that he couldn't go to the next Jumu'ah. But he said, you know what, I will wait for that 6 months and I will go again. Islam found him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided him even though he was in that condition. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will find those who He chooses from the people of the world and guide them to the faith. Cat Stevens, in the height of his career, where he was like on top, best-selling albums after best-selling albums. And then in California, he was swimming in the beach, and he was about to be drowned. He says, oh God, if you could save me, I'll use myself for you. And a wave brought him back to shore. And he began to look for God in all the religions. His brother, who was a Jew, went to Jerusalem to visit and brought back for his birthday a copy of the Quran. His Jewish brother brought for him a copy of the Quran. And as we say, the rest is history. He read it, he understood that this was true, he accepted Islam, and then he was told, music is haram in Islam. And here you find yourself at the crossroads. I just accepted this faith, and now they're telling me my whole career is unlawful. But Allah had found guidance in his heart. He took all his guitars, and he could imagine the kind of guitars he probably had. And he sold all of them and donated all the money to charity. He said, okay, if music is haram, I will stop it. And so, each of us get guided by Allah. And when you get guided to Islam, Islam is of such that it creates in the person values. The teachings of Islam have values, have parameters, have rules, have regulations, have things which are defined for us. And so your belief system forms values in us. Because we are Muslim, for example, we don't eat pork. That's a value that we have. Because you're a Muslim, we don't thief from others. If you're a Muslim, we don't cheat. We don't cheat. If you're a Muslim, our value system is that we show mercy. We share. So when you become guided to Islam, you have a value system that you develop. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, that we will return to Him, that we must live our lives with consciousness, obeying Him, and so on. And the Muslims who accept Islam, they establish those values by two ways. Because you can have your belief in your heart, you can have your values, but the world will not see it until you speak and you act. The way we bring out what is inside of us to the world is through our speech and our actions. That's how the world interacts with us, based on our actions and our speeches. Our histories get written by our actions and our speeches. How does someone know my value? They look at my actions and they look at my speeches. And they said, okay, he or she stood up for this. That's how we know that's one of their values. I offered him pork and he says no. Okay, that's a value again. Only by our actions and our speeches. When Muhammad Ali was asked about fight in the Vietnam War, he had already accepted Islam, and one of his values was that I am not going out and kill people who I don't even know. He says, I have no problem with those people over there. I am not going to wear a uniform and go kill people who I have no beef with. And they said, well, the consequences of that, you will be jailed for 5 years, your license will be suspended. At the height of his career, will strip you of your title. He said, my value system comes first. You can do all of that, it's okay. But I'm not going to change who I am, because I'm a Muslim. Now, brothers and sisters, all of us sitting here in the carpet who are Muslims today, we understand intimately what being Muslim is about. We all have values which we hold dear, which is the Islamic values. But what happens is when we go to act and speak, it becomes real hard to establish those values consistently in our speech and our actions. And so I am sure there are Muslims here today, probably. I hope not, but the statistics prove different. That there are Muslims here today who don't pray all 5 salah, for example. If you ask them, you're a Muslim? Yes. Does Islam say you must pray 5 times? Yes. Are you doing it? No. So sometimes actions are very difficult, even though you have the value in your heart and you have the desire to do it. And the belief that it is correct. Finding the wherewithal to make those actions manifest your value, to live your value, it's really, really tough. And that's the struggle we have. And Shaitan's role is to be able to convince us not to live our values. And so we will mess up. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps forgiving us. So don't worry. You get off the wrong path, come back on and try again. In our speeches we mess up. We know we're supposed to speak truth, we lie. We know we're supposed to talk nice to people, we speak rude to them. We know we're not supposed to backbite and insult, we do it often. But we must recognize that the value is to get to this point and to fix ourselves and get back on path. Get back to actions and speeches that are within our value system. And that's the challenge myself and all of us have every day of our lives. And so I want to let all of us understand that our struggle every day is how do I make my actions and my speeches conform to the value of Islam. And so, brothers and sisters, I want to say to you, first of all, you must know that our days are numbered, they're limited. Each of us have a finite moment in time when we will pass away from the earth. And so at every passing day, we have less amount of time available to us to do actions and to do good words. So the first thing we must recognize is that I cannot be complacent about this. Every day that passes, it's one day less. It's one day closer to my end. I have to live my life with a sense of urgency. I can't say I'll do it next week or next year. I have to value each day as tremendously important. Because if I waste it, I will never get it back. So that's the first very important principle we must always live by. Every day, every hour of our lives are important and critical. Secondly, our actions there are 3 kinds of things we need to focus in our actions. The first and foremost is those actions which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made compulsory of us to do, that have big consequences. And those are found in the establish your salah, make sure you fast in Ramadan, make sure you just pay the zakat, make sure you go to Hajj if you can afford. These 4 are critical actions. So all of us sitting here, I want you to know our beginning point has to be establish your salah 5 times a day. If you're not doing that, then this becomes your priority. Number 1. Don't spend a lot of time doing anything else. Get this one done. Make sure you establish your salah 5 times a day. If you don't have that yet, that becomes number 1 in your priority of actions to do. And zakah, saum, hajj in its season. The second kind of action that you need to focus on is the actions which fixes the outwardness of you. I mean those actions which will define you to the others. And that is, for example, proper grooming. In other words, don't look like someone who just came out of the jungle. Our faith, you must dress nicely. You must be well garbed, well groomed in our appearance, because we represent the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When someone look at us, they must see the magnificence of Allah in our physical outward appearance. And especially the youth. It is not cool and okay to just dress anyhow. Man came to the masjid one day, he was so disheveled. The Prophet ﷺ upset and exhorted him. Another one was very rich, and when he came to the masjid, he looked like a pauper. Let your wealth show on you. Why are you dressed like this? So part of the dynamic of actions is that we must ensure we are well groomed. Number 2 is cleanliness. That we are clean. That we practice a lifestyle where cleanliness is a high ethic among us. This is part of the second type of action. The outward appearance. When we walk, we must walk in a sense of humility. وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. When the servants of Allah walk on the earth, it is with a kind of humility. You know, there are all kinds of walk. There's swagger boy, there's the kind of arrogant walk, there's the kind of... Your walking tells a lot about the kind of personality you are. We must walk in such a way that our humility gets expressed. And so the outward, and then the other. If you sneeze, learn what you have to say. When you sleep, the adab that we have. And then the third type of actions are those which are inside of us, which we have. Our sense of optimism must be developed. For a believer, لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. We don't fear, we don't grieve. It's not part of our personality. The believer is always optimistic. لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. They never lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Internal qualities that manifest in our actions. Sense of hope in Allah. The calmness you have when tested from Allah because you trust in His wisdom. These are things which come from inside that we have to develop and be strong about. Our sense of empathy. That when we look at others, we don't judge them, but we seek to find out what their journey was that led them to that place. And we seek to find a way to help. Our sense of mercy and forgiveness comes from inside. That even though la darar wa la dirar, we don't harm, we don't reciprocate harm when it's done to us. The sense of justice that is within the Muslim, that causes him to speak truth to power. All of this are critical actions that come, that must be developed and inculcated within us. And so we try to live our lives dealing with all of this. Trying to worship Allah, trying to make sure that we look and we are presentable, and that when we go to share Islam to someone, they look at us and they feel, okay, this is someone I can talk to. That we don't look like we're some weird person, that we're strange. And I'm not defining how you must dress, but just look. Don't look like if you're disheveled, untidy, unkept. I'm not advocating you wear gown or you wear shirt, because Islam allows all of it. Right? But just look presentable. And lastly, make sure these inner things that are there to create our personalities, that we are always pleasant, we always smile quickly. You know, it's so hard now to find Muslims who smile quickly. It's like you have to work for that smile. Here you have a believer that has everything in the world. The guidance from Allah, the most precious gift. And when you go to the believers, it's like, why are you smiling? What's wrong, bro? You know, it's like, you have to like beg for that smile. Why? It should be something that comes natural to the believers. But we find it so hard to do it. For some strange reason. It is not our first inclination when we look at someone. You know, when I go to the Muslim restaurants, and if you're a restaurant owner, you may want to listen to this. I look at the employees to see if they are easy smilers. Because if it's one place you want the Muslim workers to smile, is when they're serving their fellow Muslims. So I look at them to see if they're smiling. And you can distinguish the ones who smile and the ones who don't. When you go to a Muslim physician, you look for the smile. Well, anytime we're interacting with each other in any environment, you know, this is who we are. And so, brothers and sisters, Allah has guided us, but we have to take that guidance and move it to the next level. It is not automatic. قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the people who thought it was automatic. The Bedouins, they came and they said, you know, we believe. And Allah corrected them and said, you didn't believe. You've accepted Islam, but Iman has not entered your hearts. In other words, the acceptance of Islam and being counted as Muslims is one level, but Iman is another level, according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah corrected them and said, no, don't say because you accepted Islam that you have Iman. That it's something else. So my acceptance of Islam, Allah said, but Iman, that firm conviction that moves your action to that special basis, it's something, it's a different level. And so Allah puts Islam in our hearts, and we have to work to earn the Iman that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to end up in. And so, my brothers and sisters, we're coming around to the period and the month, and we are in the month and the season of Hajj, in which we heard last week of the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who exemplified what all of this really means and established. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help all of us to don't take your Islam for granted. You were guided by Allah specially. Don't allow that gift to be rusty and to be treated with abuse. Don't allow your guidance that Allah has given you from Him, and which He calls a light for you. Don't allow it to be dimmed by our negligence and our laziness and our busyness. Make sure you, every day when you wake up, you say, my most precious gift is my Islam. What will I do today to make it better in my life? My most precious gift is my Islam. What can I do today to protect it from shaitan? My most precious gift is Islam. What can I do today to share it with someone else? My most precious gift is Islam. How can I impart some of it to my children and to my family today? It is truly the most precious gift. For without it, life doesn't make any sense. Because you will be living a life of a loser, and when we die, there will be awful consequences. So protect our Islam and learn our values, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspire all of our hearts to continue to be true believers. And when we mess up, to return, to acknowledge it to Allah and to the person who we may have abused, and say, I'm sorry, I'm human, I will do better next time, and then make an effort to do better. That's all it is. قولي قولي هذا واستغفر الله. الحمد لله كثيرا طيبا فيه ونشهد ان لا اله الا الله ونشهد ان محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا اننا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للايمان ان امنوا بربكم فامنا. نستغفر الله الذي لا اله الا هو الحي
Boy Khan, just to show who he is.